The Indian Ocean has always been a highway of trade, power, and conquest. For centuries, empires rose and fell based on who controlled these warm waters, stretching from Africa's coast to the Strait of Malacca. Today, in the 21st century, a silent but decisive battle is unfolding here once again. On one side is India, a nation whose geography makes it the natural guardian of this ocean. On the other side is China, an ambitious power hungry to dominate the seas to fuel its economic and military rise. This is not just about warships or submarines. This is about influence, trade, security, strategic dominance, and survival in the new global order. And make no mistake, the world is watching closely as India and China test each other as resolve in the Indian Ocean. A theater that could well decide the geopolitics of the next century. When we think of India's geography, it is easy to miss how extraordinary it is. A massive triangular peninsula juts right into the Indian Ocean. To the west lies the Arabian Sea, connecting India to the Middle East, Africa, and Europe through the Suez Canal. To the east lies the Bay of Bengal, opening pathways to Southeast Asia and the Pacific. Above, the Himalayas protect the north, but in the south, India is entirely exposed to the seas. That is why India has been called an oceanic power since ancient times, and that is why. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has often repeated that the Indian Ocean is not just a body of water, is India's strategic destiny. China, on the other hand, has no such natural advantage. Its coastline faces the Pacific, but its lifeline, its energy imports, pass through the Indian Ocean. China depends on Middle Eastern oil and African minerals, and nearly 80% of its energy supplies travel via the Indian Ocean, squeezing through the narrow Strait of Malacca near Singapore. This vulnerability is so serious that Chinese strategists call it the Malacca Dilemma. If India, with its navy, chooses to choke those sea lanes in times of conflict, China's economy could grind to a halt. That fear has shaped Beijing's policies, and it explains why China is pouring billions of dollars into building a naval presence in the Indian Ocean. This rivalry is not hypothetical. It is happening right now, often below the radar. India's Navy monitors Chinese submarines entering the Indian Ocean. China builds ports in countries surrounding India, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Myanmar, creating what many call the string of pearls. Each pearl is a potential Chinese naval base encircling India. India counters by building alliances with the US, Japan, Australia, and France, ensuring that it is never isolated. Every move is a countermove. Every investment, every exercise, every ship deployed tells a larger story of a hidden naval battle for influence. Consider the case of Gwadar port in Pakistan, funded and built by China under the Belt and Road Initiative. Gwadar gives Beijing access to the Arabian Sea just kilometers from India's coast. For China, it is a strategic jewel. For India, it is a dagger pointed at its western flank. Then there is Sri Lanka's Hambantota port, leased by China for 99 years after Sri Lanka could not repay loans. Just south of India, Hambantota is a perfect spot for Chinese warships to refuel. India responded by doubling down on its presence in the Andaman and Nicobar Islands, which sit like a gatekeeper at the mouth of the Malacca Strait. India has transformed those islands into military outposts with airstrips, radars, and missile systems, signaling to China, if you come here, we are ready. The story continues in the Bay of Bengal. China has deepened ties with Myanmar, building roads, pipelines, and port access at Kyaukyu. This gives Beijing an alternate energy corridor, bypassing the Malacca Strait. India, in response, strengthens ties with Vietnam, Indonesia, and Thailand, and pushes its Act East policy to anchor itself in Southeast Asia. The rivalry spills into Africa, too. China invests in Djibouti, where it established its first overseas military base, while India builds naval partnerships with Seychelles, Mauritius, and Madagascar. Step by step, the ocean is becoming a chessboard where every square is contested. But why does this matter for ordinary Indians and global citizens? Because whoever dominates the Indian Ocean dominates global trade. 1/3 of all shipping passes through these waters. Oil from the Gulf, goods from East Asia, resources from Africa all move across this ocean. If tensions escalate, it could disrupt supply chains, raise fuel prices, and destabilize economies worldwide. Already, small skirmishes have occurred. Indian Navy warships shadow Chinese submarines. Chinese research vessels are spotted near Indian waters. Both sides send signals without firing shots, but the tension is unmistakable. This is not just about military pride. It is about securing national interests in a region too important to ignore. India's naval doctrine reflects this urgency. Unlike its army and air force, the Indian Navy has long emphasized forward presence. Sea control and sea denial are its guiding strategies. India invests in aircraft carriers like INS Vikrant and INS Vikramaditya, nuclear submarines like INS Arahant, and long-range maritime patrol aircraft. It conducts joint exercises like Malabar with the US and Japan, showcasing interoperability. India understands that it cannot match China's ship for ship, but it can use its geography and alliances to balance the scales. China may have a larger navy, but the Indian Ocean is India's backyard. China, meanwhile, refuses to back down. It rapidly builds warships and submarines, producing more naval vessels each year than any other nation. Its Belt and Road projects ensure that it has access to ports across the region. It cultivates political ties with leaders in South Asia, offering them loans and infrastructure in exchange for strategic cooperation. For China, the Indian Ocean is not optionally its survival. And that makes it more determined, more aggressive, and more willing to take risks. So, are India and China headed for a naval clash? Experts argue that an open war is unlikely because both nations know the cost would be catastrophic. But the risk lies in accidents, miscalculations, or proxy conflicts. Imagine an Indian warship confronting a Chinese vessel near Sri Lanka. A small misunderstanding could spiral into a larger crisis. Already, we have seen this dynamic on land in the Himalayas, where clashes in Galwan shocked the world. On the seas, the stakes are even higher because the entire global economy could feel the shockwaves. Prime Minister Modi has positioned India as a net security provider in the region. His government openly declares that India will ensure peace and stability in the Indian Ocean. This reassures smaller nations, many of whom distrust China's loans and opaque deals. Nations like Maldives, Mauritius, and Seychelles welcome India's assistance, knowing that India seeks partnership rather than domination. At the same time, India leverages its diaspora, trade, and cultural influence to build soft power, countering China's checkbook diplomacy. For Modi, this is not just about military strength. It is about narrative. It is about telling the world that India is the rightful guardian of the Indian Ocean. But let's not underestimate China's ambitions. President Xi Jinping has tied the Belt and Road Initiative to his political legacy. China wants to be a maritime superpower, capable of projecting influence globally. The Indian Ocean is central to that dream. If Beijing succeeds in surrounding India with bases and allies, India could find itself squeezed. That is why New Delhi works tirelessly to prevent that outcome. Every naval exercise, every port deal, every diplomatic summit reflects this strategic contest. The U.S. plays a major role in this story. Washington views India as a critical partner in balancing China's rise. Through initiatives like the Quad India, U.S., Japan, and Australia, the U.S. hopes to build a coalition that can maintain a free and open Indo-Pacific. India benefits from this, gaining technology, intelligence, and training. Yet India also walks a fine line, balancing ties with Russia and maintaining its strategic autonomy. India will not be anyone's pawn, but it will accept partnerships that serve its interests. And in the Indian Ocean, such partnerships are crucial. The hidden battle continues in ways most people never see. Undersea cables carrying internet data are protected. Satellites track ship movements, submarines lurk silently, drones and unmanned vessels are tested. It is a 21st century contest blending old-fashioned naval power with futuristic technology. Both India and China know that this struggle is not about who has more ships today. It is about who shapes the rules of tomorrow. Will the Indian Ocean remain open, peaceful, and balanced, or will it tilt toward Chinese dominance? That is the unanswered question. For India, victory means ensuring that its trade routes are safe, its neighbors are secure, and its influence is respected. For China, victory means breaking free of its vulnerabilities and projecting power into the heart of the Indian Ocean. Neither side can afford to lose. That is why the battle is so intense, even if it is rarely visible in headlines. And that is why the rest of the world, from Washington to Tokyo to Canberra, is watching so carefully. Because the future of the Indian Ocean is not just India versus China. It is about the balance of power in the entire world. As viewers, we must understand that the story unfolding here is larger than any single news event. It is a generational contest, one that will shape the 21st century. When you see an Indian warship sailing proudly or a Chinese submarine lurking quietly, remember, these are not isolated incidents. They are moves in a grand strategy, a hidden battle playing out on the blue waters of the Indian Ocean. And in that battle, India and China are not just rivals. They are symbols of two competing visions for the future of global order. The hidden naval showdown in the Indian Ocean is no longer just a matter of speculation. It is happening now. And the choices made today in Delhi, in Beijing, in Washington will decide whether the Indian Ocean remains a highway of peace or becomes a battlefield of conflict. The stakes could not be higher, and the world cannot afford to look away.